welcome back to another episode of NRS After Hours, the official podcast of New River students. I'm your host, Liam Adair, and today we have our second guest on our second episode. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? What is your name? What grade are you in? How long have you been coming to NRS?
My name is Kaylee Jeannite. I'm in 11th grade, and I want to say it's been over 2 years now, a little over 2 years now I've been coming to NRS.
Awesome. And in your about 2 years of being at NRS, what would you say has been your biggest takeaway, whether that's something you've learned or just an experience that you've had? Like, what's been the biggest, highlight or just standout thing in your 2 years or so of being a part of New River students?
Yeah, I mean, of course I love New River so much, and I feel like whenever Ryan's talking, he's, taking it at a general perspective, and something that I like about NRS is just kind of isolating my age group. You know what I mean? Like being with kids and being able to hear people's experiences, kind of relating to me a little bit more, and seeing different people's pathways and loving Christ at my age is definitely something that I've taken away from NRS.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you have been at NRS for about 2 years. How long have you guys been coming to New River as a family?
We've been coming for as long as I can remember. I mean,
I'll say.
I remember being like 4 years old and the little New River kids.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So I guess that kind of leads me to my next question. What is sort of your testimony? What's a little bit, of your faith journey in your life of being, 16 years old?
Yeah.
So, from as far as you can remember, what sort of, a little bit of your testimony of how God has brought you to where you are today?
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, we've been coming to New River for a long time now, but I guess we kind of only were there on Easter and on Christmas, that kind of thing. So I knew God, but I didn't really have a relationship with him, and I only prayed when I needed something. It was kind of that case scenario, and I grew up in a Christian household. I mean, I was told pray before you eat and all these things, but I just didn't truly understand that God is supposed to be your life.
Yeah.
So, I mean, life started to kick in, things started to get stressful. I started to go to lesser things and just trying to fill this void. And it was this really hard night, and I was just praying to God. I was like, if you are really there for me, then I really need you to do something. Like I'm hurting, it's a hard life and I don't know what to do. So I kind of came to him as a last resort. And the next day I came to church, and I had met Gracie, and she had me up in the front, and I was never up in the front. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And I started worshiping, and for the first time ever, I fell down on my knees, and I just felt the love of God wash over me. And I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
I just felt peace. And I was like, what is this? Is this about the prayer that I just prayed? Like I was overwhelmed, to say the least. And then I got in the car with my dad afterwards, and I was like, I don't know why, but I just feel happy. And he was like, that's the love of God. And I was like, so this is it? Like, now I just get to be happy forever? And God told me, this is where I can bring you. Like, this is the peace that you're not going to just feel happy forever. That's not how this works, but you will feel peace even through your hardships. And so I would love to say that after that, my whole life changed and my whole life flipped upside down. I just started following Jesus, but I can't say that because I still continue to go back to all the things that I thought would help me before. I still tried to fill the void with lesser lovers and all these things, but I started to realize that nothing is giving me that peace that I felt.
Yeah.
So I slowly started to climb my way up to where I am today, and I'm still climbing, I'm still trying to make God my life.
Yeah.
And I realized that that's the only way, so that's kind of like how it all happened. I started realizing none of this is worth it. Only God is. So yeah.
That's really cool. And that's a good point that you brought up, that it's not like a overnight, immediately transformation. It's a day by day. It's a process of continuing to grow, continuing to learn, continuing to fail and make mistakes, and learn that even though we make mistakes, even after we become a Christian, that doesn't separate us from the love of God. Right? That's what it talks about in Romans 8. And so it's good that you're pointing out that perspective, and I think a lot of people will be able to relate to that. That'll definitely help a lot of people. So are you neighbors with Lacey Fenner?
We live across the street from her, so
cool.
Yeah, close.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys kind of had a role to play in helping her in her faith journey and come to know Christ. So tell me a little bit about that. What was that like? So Lacey is a woman who comes to our church, who started coming here, I guess, a little bit after you guys started
Mm-hmm.
really getting involved and invested here. And initially they were not believers, and then eventually she did come to know Christ, and then a little bit later her husband did come to know Christ, and those are a cool just order of events of everything that happened. But I remember hearing that you guys, yeah, like lived next door to each other across the street, and you guys had a played a role in helping her kind of see some of these things. So tell me about that. What was that like to kind of evangelize someone who, uh, number one, in general, just to evangelize to someone, but number two, how is that maybe different or interesting about evangelizing someone like you're a teenager and this person's an adult?
Mm-hmm.
How does that sort of play into everything?
Sure, yeah. So when I first met Lacey, my mom had already kind of become friends with her.
Uh huh.
So, and I wasn't really sure who she was. My mom just, I guess she didn't think anything of it. My mom's kind of a social person. She'll become friends with anyone. So, and I knew she loved her a lot. And we ended up going over to her house one day, and I immediately realized, okay, this woman is not a follower of Christ. And the reason why I knew that was because I saw crystals and I
Sure.
saw things painted all over her walls, witch stuff, and
Yeah.
all these things. And I was like, okay, she's not a follower of Christ. But that doesn't change the way that we're going to talk to her about
Right.
Christ. That's the first thing that you learn being a follower of Christ. Don't let someone else drag you down. So I was like, I'm not going to exactly say, hey, come to church, come do this, but I'm going to show her this is why I have peace because of who Jesus is.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what my family did, and that's what my mom did. And eventually my mom was like, well, the reason why I believe all these things is I really started to get into church and I started to get into my Bible and things like that. And so Lacey was like, okay, I'll try it.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just see what happens. And that was it. She came to church one time, and the next day she was painting over her walls. She was
Wow.
throwing away all of her. One day,
That's awesome.
everything changed. And I mean, as much as I'd like to say that we had this huge part in it, it was just so incredible how faithful she was to jump in
Yeah.
just like that.
That
And
is
I
cool.
know she told me that her mom was a Christian, but she just never really
Gotcha.
felt it. Like she
Yeah.
just never understood why, like all these bad things could happen if there's a God. And, I
Yeah.
know a lot of people can relate to that story. So, and she even ended up inspiring me. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought we were going to show her, and it
Sure.
actually ended up turning around because I
That's
was like,
cool.
wow, I mean, it is incredible. So, yeah, it was just one day at church, and she just decided to turn her life right side up.
That is awesome.
Hmm.
Yeah, that was a cool testimony of seeing all of that, and then like it was just about exactly like a year later,
Yeah.
her husband Isaac um, decided to follow Christ, and I think he even was coming to church with her. He was just sort of like more hesitant and
Hmm.
all that, and eventually he decided to start following the Lord. So that was a cool thing.
Yeah.
Do you see a lot in high school of like that sort of like witchcraft stuff, like the crystals and
Hmm.
the tarot cards? Like, what do you see a lot of that? Do you know a lot of people like maybe at your school that are involved in that in some capacity?
Honestly, not really.
Okay,
I feel like because we're in the South,
sure.
there's a lot of people who believe in God and they
Yeah.
know that that's kind of like what they go to if they have hardships and stuff. I think I just see more of lukewarm Christians,
Okay.
believing in a God but not really following him, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
That makes perfect sense.
Hmm.
Talk a little bit more about that. So, would you say that's maybe like, I don't know, one of like the big roadblocks in what you're seeing in a lot of people your age as far as their spiritual life goes, of just trying to live it as more of a label than just like a full on lifestyle? Do you tell us a little bit of just of like what are your observations with that?
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of that, and I think I notice it because I know that that's who I was.
Yeah.
So whenever I see it, I realize immediately, oh, this is exactly who I used to be, and I kind of understand what's going through their mind. Like, there's a God, and I feel like because people grow up already knowing from the time they're 3, 4 years old that there's a God, they kind
Yeah.
of just push that to the side. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like, oh yeah, it's cool, there's a God, but I'm gonna do what I want. You
Uh
know what
huh.
I mean? And of course, being in high school, we are trying to figure out who we are and,
Hmm.
trying to get peer validation and all these things. And a lot of the time, you just don't get that from following Jesus.
Yeah.
So I think I definitely see a lot of that in high school, just chasing things, alcohol, drugs, and sexual morality and all these things
Hmm.
that I feel like I see that a lot, even though they're like, yeah, I believe in a God.
Yeah.
They don't really understand the concept of making him your life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good, and that's like I mean I can remember back when I was in high school, same thing.
Hmm.
for me, same thing. I can recognize it because that's who I used to be,
Mhm.
and so yeah, it is a thing, and it's important to be able to recognize that, and hopefully through your own testimony, be able to say there's more
Mhm.
that God is offering. So that's really good. So you have a good group of friends that is sort of like your church group.
Mhm.
I mean, there's a good amount of you, like double hands,
Yeah.
counting them on both hands. So how would you say, like, how important is having a good godly community? How important is that to have when it comes to your own personal walk with Christ?
So important to say the least. I mean, it's been incredible. At first, when I first started coming to church, it was kind of just me and Gracie,
Yeah,
and I mean, it was great, but as seeing people my age start to join our group more and more, I mean, it's so overwhelmingly comforting to have people to kind of keep you accountable and to uplift you and
hmm,
encourage you. You know what I mean? I mean, it's so important to me. I tell them that all the time. Like, I'm so grateful that God put you into my life. And I know my sister kind of has a story about this too because she I prayed to God, like, can I have a godly friend? Like, I
yeah,
just want someone to talk to you about. And we ended up just starting this whole group. And
that's cool.
I think I can speak for everyone when I say it is so important to have a fellowship. So, like I said, I mean, just encourage each other
Yeah.
and keep each other accountable for sinful habits and things like that, and just be there for each other.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
It's definitely encouraging seeing such a large group and the consistent group,
Hmm.
be adamant about, we're going to be at the front, we're going to be worshiping, we're not going to be ashamed of this,
Hmm.
whether it's posting stuff on social media or just being consistent at church,
Hmm.
whatever like that. It's definitely cool to see y'all's friend group and just how it's expanded.
Hmm.
I feel like there's definitely like the kind of core 6, 7 people that like I
Yeah.
know I'm gonna see, and then it's like I'll see some other people here and there. It's cool to meet and have new people introduced to the church and everything. So that's
Hmm.
that's cool. Um, what are some challenges that you faced um, since becoming a Christian, since deciding to maybe stop being lukewarm and start really be on fire for God? What are some of the challenges, maybe difficulties you faced or you've had to work through since kind of making that decision over these last couple of years?
Yeah. Definitely, like I said before, pure validation. Like seeing everyone else walk one way and having to take yourself and say, no, I'm going this way. Because I think we like to talk about it like it's easy and be like, oh yeah, well I know God is the way, and I do, but
Yeah,
it's definitely hard sometimes
yeah,
because
it's easier said than done for sure.
yes, definitely. And I feel like in the moment, it doesn't feel good. And nobody really talks about that
Yeah.
because, we don't want to scare anyone away or anything, but it's the truth.
Hmm.
Like, even though in the long run, yes, it is absolutely the right decision to make to steer away from your desires
Yeah.
that are just temporary. It's definitely the right decision, but in the moment, it just feels so like you're kind of left out. And I feel like when I first started transitioning from being a lukewarm Christian, it was like, wow, like I really just feel like everyone else looks so happy right now and I'm struggling, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think it's just kind of trying to understand that in the long run, they're going to be the ones who are struggling through all these sinful things that they're doing. And I'm gonna be the one who has a God on my side and,
Yeah.
someone to be there for me and someone to talk to. And they could have that too if they just accept it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the struggle.
Yeah. I saw a post or a quote the other day. Let me know if this is something that maybe is in alignment with your experience
Mhm.
or if this is different. But the quote was of a person who basically, similar to you, like was a lukewarm Christian for a long time and then really decided to fully commit to this. So they said that whenever they decided to fully commit to that and to fully dive in and to fully be on fire for Lord, they the amount of ridicule that they had wasn't really from the people who didn't believe in God at all. It was from the lukewarm Christians,
Mhm.
the people that were judging them the hardest for being fully on fire, that were judging them the hardest for actually taking their faith seriously. Is that something that is in alignment with your experience,
Mhm.
or do you feel like that's a little bit different than what you've walked through?
Yeah, no, I honestly have never really thought about that, but now that you're saying it, that is so true. I mean, when someone's just fully not about God, they're just like, yeah, you do your thing, I'll do
Sure.
my thing. But when someone's just kind of has this belief, like I said, that, yeah, there is a God, but I don't have to make him my life, those are the people that are telling you, like, it's not that serious. Like, you're doing too much, And it honestly has made my faith waver. Like, am I doing too much? You know what I mean? And because that person is also a Christian, it's also making me feel like, okay, wait, maybe I am, you know what I mean? So that actually does make a lot of sense. What you just said, I've never thought about it, but that's so true.
Yeah. I was like, I hadn't really thought about that much either, but looking back on my life, it's like, no, that's actually very true that it's a lot of the people who are not as fully invested in, they're only halfway in, lukewarm, whatever you want to call it. It's the same mindset of, I think, of like the Pharisees of back in the biblical times of, they were saying, Jesus, you're doing too much, you're taking this too far, and he's saying, no, you're not taking it far enough. And so that is, it's an interesting thing, and it's something to be aware of, and to help hopefully lead people out of that, to be able to see that there's a better way forward when you do fully commit to Christ.
Definitely.
So that's definitely cool. What is your favorite Bible verse and why?
My favorite Bible verse is 1 John 4:19.
Okay.
We love because he first loved us. Because I've always been the kind of person who wants to show love to people. Even before I was fully committed to God, I always wanted to just radiate love to people. And I always kind of felt like I wasn't doing anything correctly until I met God, and I realized I have to love the way that he loved. Like, he has to be my example, and I have to do it the way that he did it. You walk the way that he walked, and there's no way that I could be able to love someone if he didn't first love me. So I try to take his example and apply that to my life. And I just love the whole concept of loving one another. And now I know that I can't do that apart from him.
That's very good. And every day when I come to work, there's a church I pass that puts little quotes and stuff on their sign, and it says, what did it say? It said, "We love others best when we love God most." And I think that's kind of the flip side of that. The only reason we have the ability to love is because God first loved us, and because He is love, which it says also in 1 John 4. And so it's from that source, from that well, that we're able to give that love and extend that to others, and that's cool. And that's definitely a great verse to have memorized, to live by, and all that good stuff. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Kaylee, thank you so much for coming and joining us for the podcast today. Definitely good hearing your thoughts, and hopefully a lot of people are able to relate to what you've had to say, and can be encouraged and blessed by what you had to share. So if you've made it this far, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. Let us know who you want to see next on the NRS After Hours podcast, and we will see you in the next one.